Mark Van Stone. This is my video series about the Maya in 2012. I'm an authority on the Maya, and in this episode I want to establish my credentials a little bit, tell you a little bit about the history of how I got to be an expert in Maya hieroglyphs and how I know what I know and how you can trust what I'm going to say. I was always a geek in school. I was in computer club and a physics major, and one thing saved me from total nerdiness was I was in a choir. I could sing, and eventually the choir led me to a tour around the world with a choir. I went to Rome and to Paris and London, and coming from Southern California to the Colosseum is an amazing transition, and that really is probably what set my appetite for ancient things. I got my bachelor's degree in physics, and I've always been grateful that I got the rigor of scientific training, which helped me to structure my understanding of the universe and how ancient artists did what they did. But I was always interested in the technique of ancient art. I made cuneiform tablets to study ancient history, and I made illuminated manuscripts to study medieval history. And I became an expert in Celtic art, so much so that my school gave me a fellowship to study in Ireland for my senior year. And I copied manuscripts in Ireland and London and Cambridge and Oxford. And it was a fabulous experience being among these objects that communicated the life of people 1,000 years ago. In 1973, I got a job in the University of New Hampshire Space Science Center as a lab tech, but my evening gig was doing calligraphy for people, and I started teaching calligraphy to the general public and special calligraphy classes to my colleagues. I was an expert in historical scripts and illumination, particularly Celtic stuff. And I got involved in an exhibition of the Book of Kells, which came to the United States in 1979. And in the Boston Museum, they had a film playing there that was a film of me doing an illuminated manuscript using Celtic official ancient techniques of the Celtic artists, filmed by Ken Burns, his first film out of film school. And next door to this exhibition was the Japanese rooms. And in the Japanese rooms, I discovered netsuke, the little miniature carvings of Japan, which were as complicated and beautiful as Celtic illumination. In 1982 and 1983, I had the marvelous adventure of studying netsuke carving with a netsuke master, Saito Bishu, one of the great carvers of Japan. And he trained me and graduated me, and I came home with a Japanese netsuke name, Ma'aku, which earned me nothing. I couldn't sell my netsuke because nobody wants netsuke from an American. They only want it from Japanese. And I went back to calligraphy and discovered very soon, in 1984, the hieroglyphs of the Maya. And they were mysterious, undeciphered at the time. They're fabulously beautiful as anything done in the old world, and they have the added advantage of being American. They're on this continent, and I really loved that. After I discovered the glory of Maya hieroglyphs, I was given a Guggenheim Fellowship. In 1988, I traveled around the world photographing books and manuscripts and inscriptions and scribes and carvers and illuminators in every culture, from Indonesia to Ireland, and from Italy to Guatemala. And then in 1993, I was accepted into the graduate school at the University of Texas, where I was allowed to study Maya hieroglyphs as an art form. Most schools insist that you study Maya hieroglyphs in the anthropology department, but at the University of Texas was Linda Sheely, this great decipherer around whom decipherment essentially coalesced in the 1970s and 1980s. By now you've probably been wondering for quite a while, what does Babylonian cuneiform and Japanese netsuke have to do with the Maya in 2012? I'm simply explaining that everything that you learn about one ancient culture helps your understanding of different ancient cultures, and I have studied many of them, and particularly the writing of many of them. In addition to that, I have the very unusual knowledge of the physics and the astronomy, and I understand what the Maya were looking at when they were looking at the precession of the equinox or the movement of the planet Venus. And I would like to say that my combination of skills is very unusual. There are scholars that know writing, and there's scholars that know language, and there's scholars that know astronomy. But I know all three. And that's why I'm here.